Hey, what's going on? JD here, and this is the Daily JD. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, share this video. Let people know that you want them to join in the conversation. Let them know that you're here. We go live every day, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, as I throw my phone to the ground. Hopefully not a tradition going forward. So, hope you're having a fantastic day. I want to thank our supporters. Of course, we've got our YouTube members. We've got Josh WRB, as well as we have Mum's Universe. The links to their channels are down below, as well as we have our Patreon supporters. We've got Mr. Matt Mort. Of course, we've got Reviewing McReview Art. Always love having you guys support us and, being around in the chat and, supporting this channel outright. Talking about supporting channels as well, just so you know, our friend Nick Samurai Fingers has put up a brand new playlist on YouTube featuring a lot of his music. I'm pretty sure there is something that you will enjoy there. So please go head over to his channel, give his stuff some views, or maybe run the playlist in the background. He is just trying to get his last few hours to get his monetization back. So, please head over and check out Nick's channel, and I'm sure he will appreciate the help. Nick says pre-roll ads. Again, sort of the ads going on pre-roll, I don't mind so much. It's if they, sort of break in, and again, I'll continue the experiment. I forgot to do it yesterday of, sort of this play ad thing that's going on. So here you go. Missed the whole first few minutes of that. Oh, well, just to sum it up, I thanked all our supporters. Also invited people to head over to your channel to check out your playlist for music to help you get those last few hours of watch time to get your monetization back. So that's kind of the summary of what you've maybe essentially missed in the first couple minutes. So some interesting things going on in the world of cameras. So we'll talk about some camera stuff. We've got some Facebook stuff to talk about, which is big for creators as well. We're going to just essentially jump right into it. So if you have not heard, or you may have heard me talk in the past, I've been talking about things like the Nikon Z, and I've, just recently picked up a Sony a7 III. These are all mirrorless cameras. Well, essentially, Canon is apparently going to jump into the fray now. Rumor is that they're going to announce what they're calling the EOS R on September 5th. It's been fairly kept tight under wraps. Whether this happens or not is an entirely different thing. Initial rumors sort of circulating around that it wouldn't be till next year. That they were developing two cameras, but essentially what's been leaked now is that Canon is going to be making an announcement. Now, whether this happens or not is an entirely different thing. These are all essentially rumors, but it's very, very interesting. The Nikon Z camera launched last week, fairly well received, as well as, Sony has been killing it in terms of mirrorless cameras. So the fact that Canon is, about to jump in there is going to make things very, very interesting, especially if they have a good offering. So I do have some specifications of the rumored camera, and again, these things can change and they might be accurate or they may be completely inaccurate. So what's rumored to be coming out is a 28 megapixel full frame sensor. So that's what we've been waiting for, is a full frame camera, dual pixel autofocus, which is huge. For those of you who do video or utilize Canon cameras already know that basically I would say dual pixel autofocus, especially for video, is sort of where everybody needs to be. Sony's system I've been fairly impressed with to this point, but dual pixel autofocus that is available on the Canons is second to none. In-body image stabilization, or IBIS, will also be coming, so that's another big feature. 10 frames per second shooting, a decent speed. 4K 30 frames per second video, which is pretty much standard across the board. 1080p 60 frames a second. mentioned, not as long, or sorry, not as much as the Sony. Sony runs out at 120, but competitively priced at $1,900. So I mean, this is a huge kind of thing. If all three of these guys are going to essentially have these cameras out, I mean, Sony sort of struck first with the A7 III, priced at in Canada at about $2,700. Very attractive camera, very good camera, works very well. So I mean, Nikon and basically Canon are looking to move in on that space. Now, some of the other interesting things that are rumored to go along with this EOS R is that it may in fact take basically Canon EF lenses. So Canon EF lenses are the lenses that you currently use to attach to your Canon. So there is no sort of rumors or anything speculated about a different camera lens line. So this will be very interesting. You know, a lot of people will argue that, you know, basically using legacy glass, as a lot of people call it, you know, kind of defeats the purpose of a mirrorless system, because a lot of people want to go mirrorless to save weight. But I mean, that argument, you know, it's got some merits, but not terribly a lot. If you look at the Sony system, for me to replace essentially some of my glass, you know, like my 24-70, if I get a Sony equivalent in that range, essentially I may be saving 65 grams. On a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, I'm saving a whole 10 grams. On the body, I'll save about 600 grams. So I mean, if you're lucky, you're going to add up to a pound of weight. Now that might make a huge difference for you if you're going on a long safari or climbing through mountains or whatever the case may be. A pound is a pound when you are backpacking. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think it's that huge of a difference. Yeah. Hey, good to see you, Josh. Is that the M5? Yeah, that is just an example. That's not the actual camera itself. This is showing basically a Canon mirrorless. So, you know, just something to sort of represent what will be coming out. It will probably look somewhere along those lines, is my guess. So again, you know, the fact that they're rolling this out along the same time as everybody else is going to be a very interesting battle. But again, you know, if they go with their EF lenses, because there are so many Canon users out there, and I mean so many, that if they stick with their basically legacy glass and you're able to just straight on without an adapter use those lenses and they function and work well, I think the other camera companies are immediately going to have a problem, because, you know, a lot of people, myself included, will probably just get the body for the sake of getting it and knowing that I can use my lenses. They will be equally functional. I have dual focus, you know, dual pixel autofocus, you know, and probably a great camera. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, all these cameras are fairly close. Some do perform a little bit better in certain circumstances, and that's always kind of been the case. So it will be interesting to see specifically, again, what comes out on September 5th. This is just ultimately a rumor at this juncture, but, you know, I think the timing, you know, it may happen. And the thing is if Canon comes out and does, you know, a really good job of it, much like they did with the Canon 5D Mark III, which was sort of, you know, ahead of its time as basically a hybrid camera shooting video and photographs. You know, again, it's going to cause some discomfort, especially for Nikon and also Sony. So will be very interesting. Like I said, for me, it would probably actually keep me very much rooted in Canon. Right in the moment, I've got my foot in the other boat with Sony. I am using a glass adapter, so I am using all my lenses. It does seem to work very well so far. But, you know, eventually you want to kind of switch over so you have all the functionality, the speed, and, you know, no hunting and all those things. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly, you know, what Canon has to offer and what the announcement is on September 5th. So, you know, for me, that week is going to be interesting. I'm going to find out September 5th whether or not Canon's coming out with a new camera body, as well as, you know, on September 7th, I should find out whether or not the film that I'm making is getting funding. So again, exciting times. Let's jump to the comments. Josh says, I like the look of that camera. I do as well. You know, you can see behind me on the shelf over here, I have the Olympus pen which I actually got because when I was younger, I had an Olympus pen, or my dad had an Olympus pen. I just used it, and you know, I got that for sort of nostalgia's sake. It is a digital camera. I actually still use the camera. I find it very good, and it's very compact. It's what I love. It's micro four thirds though, so I mean, I will never use it to film, but it is a great stills camera. So I kind of like those flatter looks as well. I like that retro look, as Nick says. Reminds me of my mom's old 35mm from 1984. Hey, good to see you, Peter. Hope you're feeling better. I think I saw that you got yourself a little zap today, so I hope you're feeling all right, buddy, and things are going well. I have a few of those old school SLR cameras kicking around my house, which is cool. I mean, you know, definitely film cameras, if they're film cameras, are super fun to play with. It's fun to shoot film still. You know, it's a bit pricey still to shoot film, and it's getting harder and harder to find people to develop it ultimately at the end of the day. You know, it's not as easy as it once was to go get that stuff done. Nick says, good design comes from use form, follows function kind of thing. If it's a great tool and looks good too, bonus. That's absolutely true. And Pete says, no, it was a false alarm. Well, good to hear. Good to hear you're doing all right, buddy. You know, it always scary when you hear those kind of things. So glad it was a false alarm. So on the words and upwards to other news, of course, we are going to talk about Facebook. So for those of you, you know, who have been following this sort of daily talk for a long time, and portions, we've talked about things like Facebook Watch. In fact, we talked about Facebook Watch probably the first time over a year ago, and, you know, sort of how Facebook Watch is rolling out, you know, trying to occupy a very similar space to that of YouTube. It was only available in the United States, but that changed apparently today. So today, apparently, Facebook Watch is rolling out internationally. It might be a staged release from what I can tell. The press release is not terribly helpful in what's you know, sort of been released. I saw some articles basically saying that, you know, the UK, so England, Scotland, Ireland, you know, the United Kingdom are all getting it today, and then some other ones are slowly kind of trickling out afterwards. I couldn't find anything specifically to Canada. However, that being said, because we're heavily tied into North America, it may already be present and functional. So Facebook Watch rolling out, that means that there will be pre-roll ads, midpoint ads, and ads at the end of videos. That is expected, you know, to go sort of across the platform internationally now, giving creators an opportunity to essentially make money off their videos. However, like anything in this world, there is always a catch to exactly who is eligible to get what and how that's all going to work. So basically, with Facebook Watch, what they're looking at is you need to have collectively in a couple months racked up 30,000 views on videos that are 3 minutes or more. You also have to have a page with a minimum of 10,000 followers. So again, you know, we've sort of got this bar of entry point, you know, which may be easy for some people to get, or some people may already have, in which case, congratulations, you're pretty much, you know, posed to jump right in. But, you know, other people, it's definitely a level that they're going to have to hit. So, I mean, it's interesting that they've sort of gone this route, because again, you know, I would have, if I was Facebook, I would have made it globally accessible to creators as a whole, in hopes to pull all these people, because I think this would be a very viable way to do it, is to pull all the people from YouTube that aren't monetized and have a ways to go, you know, and essentially basically pirate all those people saying, hey, you know, like, we know YouTube's not going to pay you, so why don't you come over here? We'll help you out. We'll get you set up with pages. We'll get you set up getting your content, you know, keep it native to Facebook, and, you know, we'll definitely be all a part of that. So interesting that they've sort of set up these milestones. I was sort of looking around today. I was trying to find anything Facebook Watch. I will have to upload the Facebook Creator app, which is supposedly tied into it as well. I had it installed before. It's attached to my J Durham page, and I just wanted to see sort of what was going on, but I haven't got around to doing that yet. I was trying to do it in the browser, but ultimately at the end of the day, I couldn't find anything. So what that may mean is for Canada is that essentially Facebook Watch may be rolling out a little bit later, even though globally it is accessible today. So it's kind of interesting to say, yeah, it's available internationally today, but potentially internationally meaning we just opened it up to another country, and that's to us is international. So I'm just curious what you guys think of Facebook Watch, the opportunity there. What do you think of essentially the basically the benchmarks needing to get basically 30,000 plus minutes of watch time, minimum 3-minute videos, as well as essentially 10,000 subscribers. I don't think, the funny thing is with Facebook, I don't feel that people subscribe to pages very, very much the same way that they do on YouTube. I mean, there are a lot of pages out there that people follow, but I'm not sure if that's kind of built into the Facebook thing. I know a lot of people share stuff that ultimately goes viral and then gets, sort of tossed around very, very quickly, but I'm not sure if the page is that way. So I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But ultimately, that's what I have for you today. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting couple weeks with Facebook Live, Facebook Watch rolling out. It's going to be interesting as well, ultimately, with this whole camera thing. I know that photographers that I know are already, sort of fighting and talking about it, and, deciding what they want to do before anything's even sort of, transpired. My advice to you is that if you are looking for a full frame camera, if you do want to get into a mirrorless system, is kind of just, have a holding pattern for a little bit, let the dust settle, and see what happens. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as you can get your job done, it really kind of doesn't matter what system that you go with. Like I said, I picked up the Sony. I'm quite happy with what it can do. But I mean, it's doing, I can do the same job with my 5D Mark III, just there's some different bells and whistles that it functions a little bit better. So, I mean, it's always good to sort of sit and watch. I think what happens a lot of time when you have cutting edge technology, and this happens to photographers, this happens to anything, computers, you name it, sort of any kind of new technology that comes out, phones, is that people just sort of want to be on that cutting edge. And I mean, I don't know if it makes that big of a difference. Every time they release an iPhone and the screen's marginally bigger or marginally smaller, but you essentially do the same basic functions, maybe surf Facebook, send some emails, answer phone calls, and send text, unless you're an avid gamer or something along those lines, making those jumps in technology isn't necessarily the best thing for your pocketbook or the most sensible thing at that time. Good to see Bear and the jalapenos in there. Josh says, I have a Facebook page for my gaming, but I don't know if I want to do anything with it. I think the interesting thing there will be is when Watch rolls out, especially with your streaming, whether or not you want to sort of delve into, live streaming through Facebook. Facebook, seems to push forward live streams pretty well. Might be another place to cultivate an audience, but I understand as well, with something like Restream.io, that I think it's $10 US a month to essentially have that service to restream it to Facebook. So again, it'll be interesting to sort of outweigh, cost and benefits and something along those lines. So that will be interesting. Nick says, will it be interesting to see how soon Facebook changes those minimums? Yeah, and I mean, I think if they're going to change them, they're probably going to go up, is kind of how it goes. Facebook just seems to me, or it feels like it's always kind of felt like Facebook has always been more interested in keeping everybody at bay. It'll take on, sort of the big guys, but it's not worried about anybody who's lower or sort of mid-tier creators. It's not what they're kind of interested in. And they're just kind of like, this is our service, use it, and that's kind of their attitude. That's like kind of the impression. I mean, they've never come out and really kind of said that, but it's just sort of the feeling that I had, where I would think that they want to take a big chunk out of, something like YouTube's business, that they would definitely just open up the floodgates. As we talked about yesterday, there are a lot of sort of new and mid-tier platforms that are out there that do that. And people, for example, we talked about Lively, and the one individual was making about $40,000 a year on Lively, which basically shut down just this summer. But, ultimately that's how they're carving out their existence until they ultimately make it on YouTube. So I'm surprised that, Facebook didn't take that opportunity to take a bigger chunk, especially with things like Adpocalypse and the issues that YouTube has been having, and, sort of the criticism of not listening to creators. You think Facebook would take that opportunity to, sort of jump on things and, target that audience and target that people are unhappy and try to drag them over. So I think that's super interesting. Nick says, I think what you're saying is true. Most people don't really follow that many pages anymore. Yeah, I mean, I have pages and they're very, very inactive, I guess. And I think what has done that to Facebook as well is that, sort of the algorithm that basically shuts everything down when you start gaining any kind of momentum on Facebook and tries to sell you advertising is essentially that. Anything, especially that's a business. So if you have a business page, it's pretty much toast unless you are paying to basically have it promoted, which again, we've talked about before, isn't necessarily effective because a lot of these people that end up watching your stuff end up being bots. So very, very curious. It's mostly the videos themselves that just get shared like crazy, which is absolutely true, but that makes it a good space to essentially at the end of the day share your stuff because you have the right clip and it has the right, balance of what people want to see. It has the opportunity to go viral, so that is always good. I feel like it'll go down. Peter is hungry. Yeah. Hey man, 40K a year is nothing to sniff at. Yeah. And I mean, essentially a lot of these people are essentially going to these smaller platforms. In the article that was in the Atlantic, they talked about a lot of these smaller startup, sort of video companies, will go and going to things like, VidCon in the US, and essentially trying to woo creators to their platform, saying, hey, we've got this platform, come make stuff for us, we'll pay you, let's get stuff done, and treat them very, very well. And I can honestly say, that there is some unpredictability and they may get shut down. I know that when I was on VidMe, my own personal experience, I did very, very well there, and VidMe was very, very good to me. They gave me a boost. They made me a featured channel. They would throw my videos up on their front page, and I tell you, the huge amount of difference that made for how much reach those videos got was absolutely amazing. Videos that I was getting 40 views on YouTube would get 40,000 views on VidMe. It was just, a completely different environment and a much different audience, and people actively commenting as well. At a time where on YouTube, I struggled to get a comment or two on a video was kind of, how they compared. So, I mean, it's very, very interesting how that all works. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, VidMe found its demise. It ended. A lot of people, were very critical of them, saying that they would never pay people and all that kind of stuff. And I have to give credit to the VidMe crew, is that even after they shut down and they said it was all said and done, I got paid my ad revenue after, they had shut down. They could have probably just taken off with it, but they ended up paying everybody. So, I mean, kudos to them. It's, but again, that's the risk. You can put time into something, it won't necessarily take off. You might not get the traction, but you never know. At the very least, I always say with, new platforms, if you do find something, is go out there, at least get your space. So, in Josh's case, Josh WRB, in Nick's case, Samurai Fingers, is at least tie down your identity. At least get there, get in there, park it. Even if you do nothing with it, at least you have that space that if it happens to blow up, you can seamlessly slide in there at some point, and you still maintain your identity. So, I mean, that's always kind of, what I would say, in that. It's much like, the lesson learned from .coms. .coms back in the day, as soon as people, figured that this was going to be a big thing, people started buying them up. So they would buy Coca-Cola, they would buy Walmart, they would buy whatever. Their businesses had nothing to do with it. They would just park it, or, throw a bunch of, porn ads on it or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, all they wanted to do was sell it to the corporation for a lot more than the $20-odd that they probably paid for it in the initial time to pick it up. You know, they'd probably want $20,000 or $100,000 or something ridiculous, because that, you know, the way the internet is, you know, once that space is occupied, that's it. You have to be, you know, Samurai Fingers 1, which nobody wants, right? So, you know, I would recommend that if there are any platforms you are sort of looking at, is to at least go ahead and park there. Perhaps Facebook doesn't want to go to war with Google. That's an interesting point. That's maybe the case, but you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you want people filling their content, and maybe just Facebook feels that they have enough people generating content and putting content up that they don't need to pay anybody, because people are just putting it there. Again, if you have so much free content coming in and it's keeping people there, why would you change your business practices? So there you go. I guess Google has way more money. They do. They definitely do. What happened to VidMe? So VidMe shut down. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they didn't have the advertising revenue to sustain, you know, sort of their infrastructure. The thing is with, people will tell you that with any kind of video service, it is very, very expensive to run. You've got to think about the hundreds of thousands of video hours that are uploaded to servers on a daily basis. So, you know, essentially, you know, to maintain those servers and to have that kind of space and pumping it out into the internet and bandwidth is all very, very expensive infrastructure. They just couldn't sustain that based on the revenue that they were pulling in, which is understandable. I mean, a lot of people were there because they were unhappy with YouTube. It was kind of, you know, the platform that a lot of people put a lot of hope in that they would, you know, become a YouTube. But again, at the end of the day, they just could not financially sustain themselves. I know they took that technology and went and worked on some new projects. I know that, you know, I am still, you know, connected with the creators of that. They may come back with something different at some point. And if they do that, I'll by all means let you know, because I know they, you know, like I said, they were solid guys. They were doing a good thing. You know, they were upfront. You know, like I said, they could have walked away with money at the end of the day that they owed people, but they paid people out, and, you know, so it was a good thing. So there you go. I had not even heard of it. Facebook Samurai's Fingers page, good. I had heard the Tea Party U.S. government offered the Tea Party to ban something like $1 million for their web name. It's not a bad deal. That would not be a bad deal to sort of go, but I mean, in that case, you're selling it to the Tea Party party. I don't know if a lot of people would be down for that. So that's all I essentially have for you today, guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully you're digging the new hat. For those of you who watch any kind of anime, I found this. It's a Naruto hat, Ninja Academy, so Leaf Village, all that kind of stuff. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I apologize, but it's the black and white. It is traditional, if you know, for my typical hat. So I don't know, digging it. It's a little busy for my normal thing, but you know, I'll take it. So there you go. They refused, which is awesome. Good for Jeff and the boys. So that's good to hear. And a long time their website said no politics, just rock and roll. That is awesome. Fantastic. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. Just a reminder, Nick's got a new playlist going with a bunch of his music as he tries to zero in on that those last few hours to get his monetization. So, you know, go through that. If you need some background music, throw that on. I know I've listened to it a couple times today at the very least. So, again, thanks for tuning in, guys. And until next time, see ya.